On this podcast, we talk a lot about mushing as a way to stay active and bond with your dogs, whether it be with a sled, a bike, skis, or just your feet. But mushing isn't the only activity you and your dogs can do together. On today's episode, we dive into one of my favorite things to do with my dogs, hiking. Welcome to the Sibe-Stream podcast, where we talk about all things Siberian Husky. I'm Camille from Meeler Husky, and I live in Southern California with my two Siberian Huskies named Phoenix and Gryphon.
And I'm Steve from Locally to Siberian, and I live in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, with my three Siberian Huskies, Loki, Sasha, and Izzy.
And today, Steve, we have a special guest. This is my friend Beenash. We did gymnastics together, and she spent a lot of time with me and my entire pack. So she's learned some things about Siberians, but otherwise, you don't really have much like Siberian Husky experience, I would say, besides my dogs. So it's kind of interesting. We're gonna see maybe like what an outsider's perspective would be, because we're kind of like a tight-knit group here.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Beenash, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Nice to meet you guys too. I'm excited.
You already know me.
That's right.
That's epic. I already know you.
Okay, I was in interview mode.
Basically, the theme of today is other ways to stay active with your dogs besides mushing. We've talked a lot about mushing on this podcast. We've talked about what Steve does, which is, okay, I'm gonna get this right, 2-dog fat bike jor.
Yes.
And canicross, which is what I do with Gryphon, but there's a lot of other ways to stay active with your dogs, and we don't want to forget about that. The first thing I want to talk about is going back to our roots, hiking, a different kind of hike. Oh, Steve, like, only sort of laughs at my jokes.
Yeah. Do you want me to laugh?
No, it's okay. You just make it organic, because I also need to know when my jokes are poo. I wanted to bring up hiking here because Beenash and I just came from Lake Tahoe. We did some snowshoeing there with the dogs, and we've done some hikes before. And it's kind of a different dynamic than mushing, really, because you're still doing a lot of work, but your dogs could essentially help you. How are your dogs with hiking, Steve?
They're really good. We do a lot of hiking, or, like walking around the provincial parks around here. We like to do a lot of exploring, and it's like really good for them to like kind of get out and smell things even after a run. Really good stimulation.
Oh, like mental stimulation?
Mental stimulation, and then like they're smelling things, they're hearing things, they're seeing things. It's just really good for them to get out and enjoy nature with you too. So, and they can't really do that 100% when they're mushing. So usually we'll take them for a little walk. And I really like to take them out, like Point Pelee we like to go to, but we don't have any mountains. Ontario is very flat.
Oh, I guess that's something we have in Southern California that I really like, is the mountains.
So I don't know if it's hiking, but...
No, it counts as hiking. All of that counts as hiking. I guess we could start there, right? Because some people are like, what is the difference between hiking with your dogs or just taking them on a walk, right? I don't really think there is much difference. We did do a 3-mile loop around the neighborhood. I had the dogs attached to me by the waist, so it was kind of like they were still pulling a little bit, and I don't know if I would consider that a hike, though, because it was like on the sidewalk. But we have done hikes where it's like multiple types of terrain. There's an elevation gain. There's like not exactly paved whatever under our feet, but then part of it would be paved. So I don't know. I guess there isn't really a defined difference between the two.
As long as you're going off-road?
We like going off-road. Yeah, no, I actually never thought about what the difference would be. So what would you say, Beenash, are things that surprised you about hiking with the Huskies?
I didn't really think of them as a hiking dog. I don't know if that sounds weird. So, like, when I think of a hike and I think of dogs going on a hike, I think of mostly, like, labs. But maybe that's just because what I'm used to seeing. I don't really think about Huskies hiking. I just associate them with the snow. And I guess mushing. Like, that's just what I see them doing. So, I guess I was surprised by seeing how they really liked hiking and how they really love walking.
Yeah, so before I even got Phoenix, I have always been a hiker. It was like a thing my family did. And my favorite places to hike, or my favorite time of year to hike, is in the winter. Because one, there's no mosquitoes, and two, there's no snakes. Those are that's why. I just don't like either of those things. And also, like, winter is really nice. So I thought to myself, it would be great to have a dog that could hike in this type of weather. I mean, there's lots of different dogs out there, dog breeds out there that can hike, but I specifically looked for a Siberian Husky because I was like, they're just going to be comfortable in this. And Phoenix is a champ. I didn't realize after we have been doing a lot of canicross and a lot of like focusing on that kind of stuff for Iron Paws, I was like, you know, we haven't done like a good old fashioned hike in a while, and the dog seemed just so at home and so happy. And I realized that like I've been spending all this time trying to get Dora to pull me and like stressing about how like this dog doesn't know how to be a dog. And then once I got them out on the trail, like, they were still pulling me. Like, I have my running belt that I use for canicross. I still use it for hiking, and it's pretty nice because when we're doing, like, ascents and stuff like that, they'll pull me up the hill.
Didn't I comment on one of your Instagram posts and say you need a walking belt, and then you just did an eye roll at me? Yeah. And now you're just, oh yeah, it's the best thing ever. They're pulling me up the hill.
I was telling Beenash that the tactic is to procrastinate something long enough, and then Steve will just get it for you.
I guess so.
That was an epic eye roll. No, it really is the best thing, though. She was saying in the car when we were coming back from Lake Tahoe that, like, what a good birthday present, and it really has changed, like, everything that I do with the dogs. I just get it. Just get it. If you guys are thinking about getting it, just get it.
It leaves your hands free.
So that takes me to the next point. When you are running the dogs, like when you're mushing, there's a lot of gear involved, and honestly, a lot of it is just like be like over my head, especially with what you guys do with your bikes. But like, what would you say is the standard gear or essentials for when you would go hiking with your dogs?
So we use rough wear harnesses like you do. I know you use rough wear. I'm a really big fan of their products. Sponsor me.
Yeah, me too, please.
But we use the Webmaster on Loki and Sasha. Eventually I'll buy a Webmaster for Izzy. We do have backpacks for them too that like clip onto the harness so that they can carry their own water. And then we'll take the walking belts, we'll have the leashes, and then we bring a backpack, and then we'll have all the essential stuff in there like water, dog first aid kit, poop bags for, you know, a little snack, something like that, camera, and just something that's convenient to put on your back.
I forget my camera all the time. Worst content creator ever.
Yeah, and that's just usually the stuff we take on a walk or a hike, and usually that suits us pretty good. It depends on how warm it is, because it gets really humid here in the summertime, and once it starts getting really warm and humid, we have to cut the walks a lot shorter because the dogs just get way too hot.
Who's that behind you right now?
Sasha?
Yes, my favorite.
Come here. Come up.
Hi. Oh, that's Sasha. Oh, Sasha. Oh, Sasha's my favorite. I don't know if I've given you the whole rundown about Steve's dogs, but Sasha's the best. And when I say the best, I mean the wreckest wreck.
Well, don't let the others hear you.
Oh, sorry. So I did want to make a point, though, Steve. I think you hit on something really important, and it was just like when and what time of day like you would normally go out with your dog. I live in Southern California, and essentially, unless it's winter, and when I say winter, I mean like 50s, I can only hike with the dogs like super duper early in the morning or really, really late at night. And I think you were saying that on one of our hikes recently that like I was surprised that Siberian Huskies wouldn't be too hot, and I'm like, well, we particularly hike only in those times because it can be too hot for them. And I was trying to remember your rule for running the dogs. I don't know if there's a hiking rule, but I know you have a rule for running the dog.
We do, actually. It's a really quick formula, not really a formula even, just a guideline. So what you do is you take the temperature in Fahrenheit, and you take the humidity in percentage, and you add it up, and if it's over 120, then it's too hot to run the dogs.
I have to write that down.
Yeah.
The thing is that when you're running the dogs, there's a lot more heat being generated. So I think hiking, you have a lot more leeway.
Yeah, I'll have to look up if there's something. But I can generally feel it out, but usually it's safe to, like, we do a lot of sunset hikes, which are really nice here because we're on the West Coast. But I also, like, I feel like we move faster because I'm, like, trying to beat the sunset.
Yeah, like when it gets really hot in June and July here, in August for sure, we do the same thing. We adjust and we start taking them out at nighttime and early in the morning, just because during, like noon, it's just way too hot.
Would you say your dogs pull when you're walking them? Or when you're, like, going on hikes with them?
Yep, they do.
Are we cool with that?
How I've trained my dogs is that when they're wearing a harness, I want them to pull. Now, when I say they pull, like, they're not pulling me like they're pulling the sled. They're just keeping the line tight, and I want them to do that because whenever we're out hiking or walking, we're doing groundwork, and it's basically you're always kind of like just reinforcing those mushing commands, and you're always practicing them so that the dogs kind of get exposed to new situations, and when they do that and they execute a command correctly and you praise them for it, then it gives them more experience, and then when they're hooked up to the bike or the sled, you could take on more challenging things. If I don't want them to pull, I have martingales for them, and then I'll put them in their martingale collars, and they know that they're not supposed to pull with their martingale collars on.
Pop quiz. So Steve hit on an interesting point there. We have been using mushing commands when we've been hiking with the dogs recently, and I think since I got Dora, we started doing that because I just wanted to, like, have her be trained. So, do you remember what commands we've been using on the dogs?
I think I do.
Okay.
We're about to find out if I do.
Impress me and Steve.
Okay. Phoenix's favorite. On by.
That's good. We use that one.
So as we're walking, Phoenix just seems to want to smell everything because, she's a dog. So I have to say that a lot to her. Hike. Oh, my God. Be careful when using that word. Especially with Phoenix. Like, she's no lady, but, but she's got some power behind her. So I'm usually surprised by how hard, especially at the end of a hike, she's like, okay. And then, just goes. Ha to go left, and then
yes,
I want to say it's G, but I think you call it G.
No, it's G.
Oh, G. Okay, to go that way. Right.
Yeah, look, you got it. Steve's proud.
Nailed it.
I'm very proud.
We also do easy, which we did yesterday. We were going down a hill, and and whoa.
Oh,
Yay!
Yeah. Whoa, I definitely use.
I taught you well.
Quick learner.
Yeah, I wish if Phoenix learned as fast as that.
I wonder if I can do this on other dogs.
Definitely. That's a good question. So, can I teach other dogs besides Siberian Huskies the mushing commands? Of course. You can teach them anything. There's a dog on TikTok named Sirius, and their owner always says, Sirius, go to Azkaban, and he goes in his kennel. You can teach him anything. We also sometimes use G over and haul over when we want to, move over to one side. Gryphon is good at that. Phoenix is confused.
So it's like you want to, shift a little
so
bit.
usually if there's people coming, at least for me, for Steve, I'm sure you use it for other stuff, but if there's people coming and I need Dora to, get over onto the street or something like that, I'll use G over or haul over.
It's the exact same thing for us. If there's another team that I want to pass on the right side, because some people they want you to pass on one side or the other. Maybe they have a dog that's being trained and they're not really sure. So if you want to pass a team on one side or the other side, then you use them G or haul over so that they move to one side or the other.
Okay, so when you have runners and they'd say, oh, on your left or on your right, with bikers or runners, how do you do that when you're passing sleds?
Okay, so that's a very good question. There's a few different ways of doing it, but what we do is we yell trail. That gives the person in front of you that you're going to pass, that lets them know that you're behind them. And then if they look back and they see you coming, then they've acknowledged you. And then at that point you can either, a lot of the people that I run with, I know them well enough that I say, can I pass? I don't have to say that because I know that I can. But if I don't, I'll say, can I pass? And they'll say yes or no.
They can say no. You're going to be moving fast, right?
Yeah, but if it's unsafe for the dogs.
True.
I feel like you need a bullhorn to communicate or something. I'd be screaming that. Do you have to scream? Is it
Not
really
at
a
all.
lot of noise?
Well, you're in the woods.
It's mostly quiet all around, so if you're able to project your voice well, then you could pretty easily hear it. And your attention is naturally really high when you're out there because you're listening for, wild animals. Anything that could be, a danger to your team. So you're always on, a really high alert, so it's usually easy to get people's attention.
Okay, let's pretend you, Beenash. Let's say that you got a Siberian Husky and you wanted to start hiking. What would be the first things that what advice would we give you?
I would definitely tell somebody to invest in the proper gear. the right harness is really important. So there's a lot of harnesses that they come across a dog's shoulders. They're called like an easy walk type of harness. They can actually
Sasha.
They can actually like affect the dog's gait and cause like skeletal and muscular injuries over time if you use them too much. So I always tell people to get a Y harness, which is the harness comes down the chest this way and comes up around the neck this way. And they're usually a lot beefier and they have a lot more support, so that like if something happens, like say there's like a ledge and the dog slips, it's a lot easier and less shock to the dog's body if something like that happens.
Right.
Another thing is I don't like snaps. Those are those like the clippy things that you use on your leashes. I really like to use leashes with carabiners and locking carabiners, so that under all circumstances you're always going to be attached to your dog. Yeah, just be aware of your surroundings and be aware of where you're going and the rules of the places. You always want to be respectful of the environment.
Yes.
I'm sure Camille can tell you that you go to certain places and there's poop bags everywhere, and it's like, come on guys, this is a bad look for dog owners.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was getting really mad actually on the trail because I kept seeing poos, just like rogue poos on the trail, and I'm like ruining it for everyone else, basically.
So, like, you can look for trails that obviously allow dogs, but what about the other trails? Like, let's say there's no sign that says yay or nay about a dog. What does that mean for a dog owner?
I would usually avoid it.
Okay.
I really only go to trails that say, like, dogs allowed on leash. And actually, I prefer the ones that allow dogs on leash, because when I go to trails that allow off-leash dogs, it's kind of hard to control the situation. And I always seem to get roasted every time I go to those. Like, people are like, you can let them off leash. And I'm like, I don't think you know them. You don't know me.
Also, if there's no like signage at all, those could be like being used by like dirt bikes or snowmobiles or ATVs, and might not be the safest place to walk a dog. If there's no signage at all and it's just like a trail that you found, I try to avoid those kind of things.
I usually use, and I know people give this app a lot of crap because it's not always 100% accurate, but I usually use the app All Trails to find if there's like anything in the area, and people will leave reviews and it will say like if your dog's allowed on leash or if it's good for kids even, because I also have that. Definitely do your research before you just like head out there, but honestly just start, get the right gear, do your research on that, and then bring more water than you think you're gonna need. Like what happened yesterday, I dumped out a whole water bottle in one of the bowls for the dogs, and then Gryphon drank out of it and then completely flipped it over, and Phoenix was like, what about Phoenix? And then I leave one in the car. That's the other thing. If we're driving somewhere to do a hike, I leave an extra bottle of water in the car because they're going to be really thirsty when they get back. And sometimes my dogs don't like to like inhale water while they're working.
Usually I bait the dogs water before I run them, and even when it gets hot in the summer, I'll start baiting them water before I walk them. And the idea of that is just to like put something in their water to make them drink. Like they're gonna want to drink once they're hot, but the whole idea is to hydrate them before they get dehydrated. And usually when I do that, they don't drink a whole lot of water even after they exercise, because they're not really that thirsty. They just want to kind of wet their whistle. But we have these really nice bladders. They're like 1 liter bladders that fit into the backpacks, and they hold 1 liter of water. They're perfect because there's 4 of them.
I think we have the same ones. We have a specific backpack. We've had several actually, but we have a backpack that has the bladders that come with it, and it's really nice and like flat against their body. That is something I would say back when Phoenix was a lot younger and I didn't really do enough research. I had like a backpack for her that was kind of wide, and she caught it on a rock and just like ripped the entire thing open. And Phoenix really likes rocks and she's really good at like maneuvering around terrain, but she forgot how wide she was and just like all the stuff fell out. Yeah, it sucked. So I invested in like something slimmer with the bladders in it so that they could carry their own water, which is nice. And when we had Falcon, Falcon was probably the dog I've had that had the most sled dog potential. She pulled, she followed instructions, and she was really powerful. So when we went hiking with her, I like almost nearly fell over every time. So we would put the backpack on Falcon to almost like weigh her down a bit, and then Phoenix would just wear a regular harness, and it would finally even them out. Once Falcon got tired, we would switch it over to Phoenix, but like that's how I was able to not die.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of weight for a little bit of extra work for them to do.
And she could definitely take it. She was still pulling a lot.
So let's say you're a noob and you're starting on basic like potty training and all that fun stuff. at what point is there a point that's overwhelming if you're trying to get them like house trained, but then also trained to work outside? Like work, pull, like whatever it is that you want them to be
There's
active.
a specific age. I mean, you can answer this, Steve, of like when to really start them pulling.
There's like a pretty standardized guideline of like for every month old they are, it's like 5 minutes of exercise, of like structured exercise. Usually by the time that you have a dog potty trained, even then they still really can't do any sort of structured exercise. And before you can really even harness them up and start like mushing them, and even like for like long, you know, half hour, 45-minute hikes, you really want to wait until their growth plates are closed. Basically that just means like the whole time they're growing, their bones are expanding, and you got to wait until there's these plates that fuse together that kind of, I'm sure you're aware. Once those are closed, then it's a lot safer to do more intense exercise.
And that's on puppies.
Yeah. What if I get a rescue?
Oh, okay, for sure.
I mean, I guess it's up to how comfortable they are.
Like when you got Gryphon,
Yeah.
how did you coordinate getting her, you know, in the house and with Phoenix, and then also teaching her
this is a
commands?
really good question, actually. I do this with all the dogs. Anytime we go to meet somebody new, we don't do it in our house or in the other person's house because it's like the dog's territory, and I have females, they're very territorial. Phoenix will yell at anybody who is looking at her water bowl incorrectly. Honestly, the best way that I think to socialize them is to have them do a group activity that's like almost a little bit worky. I always suggest going on a hike. Hiking kind of like lets you bond with your dog, and then it lets the dogs bond with each other. My parents had a yellow lab that didn't like anyone. She didn't like strangers, and she didn't like other dogs. She only liked Phoenix. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get Falcon, and I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to like how to introduce her without them just fighting with each other. So we were like, okay, let's go take a hike. It doesn't even have to be far from the house. We'll go on a hike together, and then that's the way that we're gonna introduce them to each other. And it worked out really well. But at the end of the hike, towards the end of the hike, she was walking in between Phoenix and Falcon. Like, she wanted to be part of the group.
Aww.
So I always suggest that, like, if you think that they're ready for that kind of stuff, like, definitely take them on a hike. It's a good, like, introductory way to bond and be friends. I think I like it even more than just taking them to the dog park. It's more of a controlled environment.
Face-to-face dog meetings are extremely unpredictable. You never want dogs meeting face-to-face
Exactly.
with nothing else to do, because there's just too much to focus on. When you walk them together, there's a lot of other stuff going on that they're paying attention to, so that they can't just focus on each other.
Yep, and they're next to each other. They're, like, on the same level. It's less threatening, I would say.
Come here.
She sounds like
Come
she
here.
has an opinion.
She has many opinions.
Okay, so I did want to get into something else, and I'm really
Okay.
excited about this. Only because I knew something that Steve didn't know.
Uh-oh.
No, it's nothing bad. But, like, anytime I bring anything up dog-related, you've already done your research because you're just, like, a guy that does, like, a lot of research, which is a good thing. Clearly, I'm just,
Okay.
like, a hot mess. But I mentioned crag dogs, and you were like, what's that? And I was like,
yeah.
I know something that Steve doesn't know.
What are
Crag dogs?
Before I got Phoenix, I was also a rock climber, and you can climb indoors and you can climb outdoors. So we were doing a lot of climbing outside, and a crag dog is a dog you bring with you to the crag when you're climbing. They don't necessarily climb, they just chill there, because essentially you spend the entire day out there. It's like a giant fun picnic where people are just climbing and you're like hanging out and chilling. It's so fun. The thing with crag dogs is they're actually they're not controversial. It's just a lot of people have different opinions on them because they need to be very chill and incredibly well behaved. And Phoenix is a good crag dog. Nothing seems to stress her out. Like, I was vacuuming around her body earlier in the week, and she just looked at me like, really? And the thing that's dangerous about that is because when you're rock climbing, like, you have to wear a helmet, but, like, your dog doesn't have a helmet. You need to, like, be able to control the situation here, and your dog also has to be able to follow instructions because things might be falling. So they need to be somewhere that's cool. They need to not freak out when people are belaying at the bottom. And then a lot of times I'll be like throwing rope like from the top of where we are, and it's kind of like when you say trail, Steve. Basically, like, rock climbing etiquette is to be like rope, and then you just like throw the rope down. Your dog needs to be able to like be out of the way for that, not like freaking
For
out,
sure.
whatever. Definitely very dangerous, which is why it's so
Controversial.
So I'm not like for or against crag dogs. I would say obviously use your own judgment. And if you're doing like multi-pitch climbs, I think that's even harder. That's basically when you climb and then there's like I guess like a ledge or a surface or whatever, and then the other person comes up after you and brings all the stuff, and then you take a break or whatever, and then you climb again, and then you do the same thing over and over again. Like, how do you bring the dog with you? They make dog harnesses, but like honestly, if I can imagine my dog in that harness, she would be gyrating
like a cyclone.
Has Phoenix ever, like, seemed worried that I'm climbing? No. She literally just sits there like, I'm just chilling. But yeah, I just wanted to explain that's what crag dogs are. It's a real thing.
Sounds really cool.
It's really cool. Like, I love rock climbing. Sadly, I haven't been able to do a lot of it out here, even though there's so many climbs, because I just don't have another person belay. It's a 2-person thing. Maybe when Tiny gets bigger.
Oh no, she's doing zoomies.
Yay, Sasha!
Yeah.
She was like,
Jump up. Hi.
So Beenash said something earlier this week.
She's
You were
nuts.
like, oh, I could see myself getting a Siberian Husky, and I was like, disclaimer. My dogs are great, but they are potatoes. So like, you should expect someone that's bananas. Expect Sasha.
Okay.
Yeah, I've said that to a lot of people considering a Siberian Husky. It's like, there's a lot of people with really calm Siberian Huskies. Like, Loki and Izzy are a lot more level-headed, but you can't really expect that. I usually tell people to, like, expect the worst-case scenario.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you get a Siberian Husky and it is the worst-case scenario, you don't want to have to, like, rehome it, right?
Right. And, like, Phoenix is really calm right now, but she was a tornado when she was younger. Let's not forget that she peed on your carpet. You guys go way back.
She sure did.
All right, so we talked about hiking. We talked about crag dogs. What other ways could you stay active with your Siberian Husky?
Oh, there's so many different dog sports that you could participate in. There's agility.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think, like, so when I think of agility, and maybe you're thinking this too, I think of the dog doing a lot of work. But if you've ever watched any of the, like, agility competitions or whatever, the person who's there with the dog is running just as much, right? They're, like, it's hard.
That's a really good way to, like, a lot of mental stimulation, because there's a lot of training that goes into that too. You could do, like, fly ball. You can do lure coursing. That's cool. I want to do lure coursing.
Lure
That'd be
coursing?
fun.
What's lure coursing?
A lure course is like a little lure, and it, like, runs around, and there's, like, a little motor and a string, and the dog just chases the lure around.
And then has to catch it?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You can do nose work.
Yep, nose work.
Yeah, it's like what it sounds like, sniffing for stuff. We're not experts on this, so don't quote me on anything here. I'm a hiker, and I rock climbed. And sometimes I do Candy Cross. There is something, though, Steve, that I did for the first time this past weekend, and it was a hot mess. And that was ski joring. The trail we chose started with an incline, and I was like, the dogs are gonna murder me. They were, I was impressed, though. It wasn't as big of a mess as I thought it was going to be, and maybe we'll explain this for the people on the podcast, but ski joring is essentially canicross, except you're wearing skis. Would it be like that?
Yes.
Yeah. You're wearing cross-country, on a cross-country trail.
Yeah.
I don't have cross-country skis. I have downhill skis, so that was already one thing. And then we did go to a cross-country trail that started with, like, a slight incline. So it was so interesting because Gryphon does canicross with me, so she was already, like, they lined out really nice. Oh, you saw that? I said line out, and they were like, perfect. And then when I said hike, they went, but the hill was just, like, a lot.
Hills can be really hard.
Yeah. So I was helping a lot on the way up. And then towards the end, Gryphon was just like, I'm kind of done. And also, my dogs are not very fast. Like, I've seen your dogs, especially with the sled, and they are fast.
Even on the sled, we hit, like, 15, 16 miles an hour for short bursts. Not, like, not like
average
the whole
speed,
run, but yeah, they'll hit 15, 16 miles an hour on the dog sled.
And it was, like, towards the end of the day anyway, so they were kind of tired, and we did play around in the snow earlier in the day, but it was really cool. You were right. I loved it.
I knew you'd love it.
I loved it. I did become a spectacle where we were because people were like, do they pull you? And then they just started pulling their phones out. And I was like, can we not right now? This is the first time I'm doing this and I just don't need video evidence.
They're like stopping and watching.
They
like,
were. It was weird. I don't know. I was like, can we find a trail that's like nobody can see this hot mess right now?
That's part of the reason why I kind of started my channel, though, is because a lot of people knows of these sports kind of on the surface, but they don't know enough about it to get involved with it. And then when they see it, it's like the coolest thing ever, but you know, they don't really know what to do to start their dogs off in it. Know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and actually that's me. I mean, I was already a hiker, so I was hiking with my dogs, but like I always was like, oh, it'd be cool if they could pull a sled. But I just don't know where to start. And it's a little bit intimidating, I will say, because like there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of gear, and like even in my I'm in an urban mushing group that I've never actually been out with because I like don't have any of the right gear. Now I do, but yeah. It's a little intimidating. Hopefully this podcast and like your channel help people to like feel a little bit more informed and less intimidated. I think you would say that, right? Like if you know more about something coming into it, it's a little less scary.
Oh, for sure.
I like talking about hiking too, because there's a lot of people out there that have, you know, older dogs that might not be, you know, spry enough to do dog sports. Talking about hiking and the safe ways to do it, it's important for them to be able to participate too, right?
Mm-hmm. The last thing I wanted to touch on is we did yoga yesterday.
Yeah.
And the dogs wanted to like be really involved in it. Yoga. I don't know if you've ever done yoga with your dog, Steve.
No, but I've done stretching.
Yeah, and actually, so were we doing downward dog? We're going into downward dog. I look over, Gryphon is in between our mats, and she's stretching like this, and I was like, this is perfect. Nobody was here to take a picture of it, but it was perfect. Bottom line, there's many ways to stay active with your Siberian Huskies that aren't necessarily mushing. Of course, if you're mushing your dogs, that's awesome. You're already doing a great job, better than me trying to ski drawer with 2 potatoes.
It worked.
It's your first time. Stop being so hard on yourself.
It worked. I have to do it again, but we don't really have a lot of snow. Yeah, we were looking though for a sled because I was like, I want to take everybody. I didn't want to just be me, but like I don't think they would have pulled the sled.
You would had to have put the sled attached to you, and then you attached to the dogs. So that it would be a what's the word for it? There's like a word for a sled like that's like an actual setup that they do in Iceland.
Wait, stop.
Say that again.
So okay. Dogs.
Yeah.
Me on skis.
Yeah.
Sled.
Yeah.
I would have loved that.
Yeah, I would have taken you guys on a tour. Maybe I should be in front though. Okay, so Camille, the lead dog.
That's an actual thing. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
That's so cool. If you remember.
Would it be a sled train? Like a soul train?
Soul train.
Soul train. That's
Polka.
So cool.
I think it's polka.
Oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing ever.
That would have been so fun.
That really would have made us the entire spectacle of the whole cross-country trail.
It's polka, and then you're just using a dog doing ski drawing with polka.
Wow.
Polka ski drawer, you can call it.
So cool. So cool. I want to be on the sled. It's a lot. Props to all the people who ski draw all the time because I had the dogs in harnesses, right? And then I had like the line that was like attached to me. Then I have my skis and also my poles and then like me just like trying to regulate. It was just so much. I was sweating. Yeah. It's already a lot like skiing just by myself. Like
even with watching, it was like, whoa, that's a lot of work. Is she gonna make it up the hill? I don't know.
Oh, I had my jacket open because I was legit like, I'm sweating so much right now.
I think you guys got me to like a really good baseline of like what expectations are and like what are the variety of different things that you can do, especially when you're brand new to it and you're not an experienced Siberian Husky owner or really like an experienced dog owner. Maybe if this is going to be your first dog, to maybe watch your channel in its entirety and really get the full picture of what's happening.
We've trained you well. I was thinking, though, when you mentioned you were thinking, okay, maybe a Siberian Husky would be for me. I was like, this is, like, I wanted to do the disclaimer. It also, like, welcome to the club, you know?
There's lots of communities, too, like, around Siberian Huskies and, like, on different social media, so You can always join them and see what other people are doing and ask for advice from them. And like all communities, there's good and bad, but usually people in the Siberian Husky community are pretty accommodating.
One last thing. I saw that you posted it, Steve, so I just wanted to bring it up. But the COVID vaccine was being delivered by dog sled. Mm-hmm. I'll put a link to that in the description box below. But how cool is that?
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
There's still lots of places where it's really hard to get to, and the easiest way is usually a dog sled. If you think about it, like if you have a snowmobile and it runs out of gas, you can take gas with you, but if you get stuck, it's 800 pounds. How are you going to move it? Mm-hmm. With a dog team, even if you get stuck, the dogs are going to pull you out.
Yeah, true.
Ryan Olsen was out training her dogs, and I think she had somebody breaking trail for her on a snowmobile, and the snowmobile got stuck. So they put the two dog teams together and then used the dog teams to pull the stuck snowmobile out of the snow.
That thing's like 800 pounds!
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, but they had like 26 dogs.
It's like a dog movie waiting to happen.
All right, one quick announcement before we end this podcast. We now have a Facebook group. Steve created one. Hooray! Steve, the resident expert at Facebook, because clearly, even though I've been on it very long, I don't know what I'm doing on there. I think it's because we've determined it's because Steve is a lot friendlier and talks to people, and I just like to lurk on pages.
I guess.
Yeah, Steve's the outgoing one. I'm just here lurking on pages, not saying anything. If you're in a Siberian group, I'm probably in it. I'm just lurking in the corner.
Probably. But yeah, Camille will put the link in the description and check it out. And join and like and all those good things.
We'll put any conversation topics in there. You guys can suggest whatever topics you want to put on the podcast. Ask us some questions. It will be really fun. Thanks for joining the Sibe-Stream podcast this week. Your support means so much to us. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and leave us a like, comment, or review. Remember, the best way to care for your Siberian Husky is with love. Take care, and we'll see you all next time. Aru! You do the aru. Aru! Thanks for being on the show today, Beenash.
Thanks for having me,
Beenash.
guys.
Bye!